Caros collègues, dear colleagues, chers collègues, on va commencer. On va commencer avec un peu de retard. Je vous demande pardon, mais on va travailler vite et essayer de aboutir a notre objectif. E je vais passer a parler em português. Caros colegas, é com muito prazer que vos dou as boas-vindas a esta histórica sessão plenária da Assembleia Parlamentar Paritária ACP União Europeia. Vamos começar agora a trabalhar sobre a própria substância da nossa Assembleia. A lista dos membros da Assembleia está anexada à ata da sessão. Tal como nas reuniões anteriores, esta reunião terá interpretação em alemão, inglês, francês, português e polaco e pode-se falar em italiano e espanhol. Gostaria de recordar que, nos termos do artigo 1º do nosso regimento, esta Assembleia é composta pelos membros das 6 Assembleias Parlamentares Regionais, que, por sua vez, são compostas por um número igual de deputados dos Estados signatários da Organização dos Estados ACP, provenientes de países que assinaram o Acordo de Samoa, e deputados do Parlamento Europeu. Os Estados-membros que não tenham assinado o acordo podem enviar um deputado ou um representante do Parlamento no estatuto de observador. O ponto primeiro da nossa ordem de trabalhos é a aprovação da ordem do dia. Antes de aprovar o projeto de ordem do dia, queria dar-vos algumas informações muito rápidas. Esta manhã ouviremos uma declaração da nossa Comissária Europeia, Urpilainen, e depois o debate, que daí seguirá. A sessão da tarde começará com 2 mensagens vídeo, uma do presidente queniano William Ruto e uma do alto representante da União Europeia para os Negócios Estrangeiros e a Política de Segurança, Josep Borrell. Estas mensagens definirão o tom para o próximo ponto de ordem do dia, um debate principal intitulado Um novo impulso às relações entre a Organização dos Estados ACP e a União Europeia, rumo a parceria liderada pelas pessoas, em que teremos um discurso introdutório do professor Maurício Carbone, da Universidade de Glasgow. Por último, vamos ouvir os relatórios do Fórum das Mulheres, do Fórum da Juventude, que tiveram lugar ontem. Pergunto se alguém tem alguma coisa a opor à ordem do dia. Se não, ela está aprovada e eu proponho-vos uma que não abordemos agora o ponto 2 da ordem do dia, tendo em conta que ele inclui um conjunto de homenagens, como sabem, pessoas que partiram, que não estão entre nós e que queremos homenagear. Vamos fazer isso no início da sessão, às 3 horas, e, se todos estiverem de acordo, passamos ao ponto, e também, neste ponto 2, vamos tomar conhecimento das decisões do Bureau e, eventualmente, também reagir às decisões do Bureau, e, portanto, penso que tudo isso é mais adequado fazermos no início da nossa sessão, às 15 horas. Portanto, o ponto 2 passa para esse momento. Alguém quer falar? Por favor.
Monsieur le Président, je voudrais m'exprimer. Vous n'avez pas parlé du point divers. Et moi, je souhaite m'inscrire
Les points divers seront au fin de la session, ok?
Je souhaite m'inscrire au point divers. Je vous prie de bien vouloir m'inscrire au point divers. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Voilà.
Caros colegas, passamos ao ponto 3 da ordem. Peço desculpa, senhor.
Muito obrigada, senhor co-presidente. Também queria me inscrever no diverso. Obrigada.
Eu penso que o secretariado vai tomar nota de todos os colegas que, entretanto, fizerem sinal ou quiserem, por exemplo, colocar os seus nomes desta forma, para termos essas inscrições no ponto diversos. Passamos então, e isso pode ser feito ao longo da sessão, até chegarmos a esse ponto. Vamos passar ao ponto 3, intervenção da Comissária Jutta Urpilainen, responsável pelas parcerias internacionais. Caros colegas, é para mim um grande prazer dar as boas-vindas à Sra. Comissária Jutta Urpilainen, que tem sido uma grande defensora do Acordo de Samoa. Estamos todos muito gratos pelo seu esforço para garantir uma forte dimensão parlamentar do acordo. Tem a palavra por 15 minutos.
Your Excellencies, honorable members, it is a profound honor to address you at the first session of the Joint Parliamentary Assembly under the Samoa Agreement. This is indeed a historic moment. So let me begin by thanking all of you for keeping the momentum going and getting this powerful partnership framework signed. This is indeed a new dawn. At a time when geopolitics and geoeconomics are increasingly interlinked, the need for multilateralism and partnerships is ever more important. I would have three messages to start our conversation today. First, the EU-OACPS partnership ranks among the oldest in the history of the European Union. It encompasses more than 1 billion people. With the Samoa Agreement, we enhance our ability to respond to the joint challenges. We strengthen our political cooperation at the multilateral level. We foster closer cooperation on the ground through the 3 regional protocols, and we expand both the scale and scope of our dialogue. Importantly, we also prioritize inclusive decision-making by amplifying the voice of civil society, of course, but crucially by increasing your role. And we do this right here in this room where democracy really comes to life. The Samoa Agreement enhances the parliamentary dimension, helping us to strengthen ties between politicians and citizens of the OACPS and the EU. Dear colleagues, the real value add of the Samoa Agreement lies in its implementation, which we must deliver together. And actually, this brings me to my second point. Through the renewed partnership, we commit to accelerating progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals and 2030 Agenda. Together, we will bolster human rights, democracy, and good governance. We will promote gender equality, inclusivity, and pluralism. And we will effectively respond to climate change, conflict, and the most pressing global challenges. Regarding next steps, the EU and the OACPS are currently preparing a proposal for the rules of procedure for the remaining joint institutions. We will follow up this with the Joint Ministerial Council in Brussels, and the 3 regional protocols will be launched, followed by regional ministerial council meetings. We will also work together to adopt guidelines for the partnership dialogue, the stakeholders' engagement mechanism, and the modalities for engagement in international fora. In the meantime, we have upcoming opportunities to really bolster our voice in multilateral fora, such as the CIDS conference, the Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries, the Summit of the Future, and COP 29. By aligning our positions and adopting joint statements, we can move the needle on issues that matter most. Yes, we can make the difference together. Finally, dear colleagues, with a view to our cooperation on the ground, I would like to see us working together in the framework of the Global Gateway strategy. Global Gateway is the EU's values-based offer to deliver on the 2030 Agenda and Paris climate objectives, and also enhance strategic autonomy and resilience. EU and OACPS countries are already working together on Global Gateway initiatives in all regions. For example, the EU and its member states, together as Team Europe, have launched a 20 billion euros green energy initiative in conjunction with African partners to provide at least 100 million people to access the electricity by 2030. At least 100 million people with access to electricity by 2030. In the Caribbean, Team Europe is working with partners to change sargassum from a threat to an economic opportunity by transforming it into cosmetics, fertilizers, electricity, or biomass. Meanwhile, the Green-Blue Alliance for the Pacific brings 15 Pacific Islands countries and Team Europe together to tackle climate, ocean, and energy transition challenges head-on. Dear colleagues, these examples are only part of the ambitious investment packages we have launched across all 3 regions. The Global Gateway Africa Investment Package, the EU Latin America Caribbean Investment Agenda, and the Global Gateway Package for the Pacific region. As we push forward to implement these packages, we will ensure that people and communities remain front and center in our efforts to tackle inequalities. Dear friends, in this period of so much geopolitical tension and instability, the EU is not turning its back on its partners. I believe the EU-OACPS partnership stands as an example. We represent 4 different regions. In some cases, thousands of kilometers separate us. Yet, we are united by a common vision for a fair, greener, and more sustainable future. The Samoa Agreement is now provisionally applied. I know I can count on your unwavering commitment to completing the internal procedures necessary for the agreement to really enter into force. So let's work together to implement the Samoa Agreement's ambitious goals for the good of our countries and the people we represent, leaving no one behind. Obrigada.
Obrigado, Senhora Comissária. Nós temos 23 colegas inscritos. Eu vou pedir a vossa colaboração para podermos encerrar esta sessão em tempo útil, termos as respostas da Senhora Comissária Eu não vou poder dar mais do que 1 minuto e 30 a cada colega inscrito e vou ter que cortar a palavra se os colegas não respeitarem esse tempo. Peço a vossa colaboração, que é a única maneira de todos podermos colocar as questões e de podermos ouvir as respostas. Dou a palavra em primeiro lugar a Belize, 1 minuto e 30. Belize, Caroline Trench Sandiford.
Good afternoon. I wish to acknowledge all distinguished participants. I am pleased to put on record that the government of Belize, led by John Briceño, administration strongly supports the Samoa Agreement and its 6 priorities. Particularly 2, I wish to report that as it pertains to human rights, we have judiciously committed to the implementation of existing international agreements, such as the International Conference on Population and Development, Program of Action on Sexual Reproductive Health and Rights, the Beijing Platform on Gender Equality, and their follow-up on environmental sustainability and stability. As you're aware, Belize is a small island developing state, and it has an existence crisis when it comes to climate change. We continue to play a leadership role in the international response to climate change, serving as co-facilitator of the informal consultation on the mitigation work program of COP28 and co-chair of the contact group on long-term financing. We asked also that we not forget Haiti as one of the countries of the Caribbean that is in crisis. Belize has engaged with the UN Peacekeeping Office and the UN Secretary General's Special Representative on Haiti since 2023 and has also participated in the ECOSOC ADHERE Advisor Group, which advocates for scaling up the humanitarian response in Haiti. As a father of the nation, the Right Honorable George Price once said, "Creation was not finished at the dawn of this earth, but creation continues, and we have a lot to do to make the world a better place." Let us all do our part through this partnership in moving the process forward.
Very much. And now I give the floor to colleague Michael Galler, 1 minute and a half.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear co-presidents. Ms. Opilainen, dear Commissioner, I thank you for your speech, and I think indeed we are at a new start, and we should try to make the best of it. I think there is a good chance for a new beginning, but we Europeans in the given global situation where we have a war in Europe, where we have tensions in other parts of the world, where we have also problems inside ACP countries, we are only one of those who make an offer. We must be aware of it, so we have to be a bit modest and be aware that we are not the only ones. And so I think it is up to us to make very clear for what we stand and what we offer, and then our partners will have to make a choice. I think there are quite some who would like to make available the best of all worlds for them, and so to say, cooperate with us and with China and with Russia or India or other partners. That's fine, that's fair enough. And of course our partners know that we stand for certain principles of democracy and human rights and good governance, and we are convinced that this serves the people best. When we speak of a people-centered and even people-led partnership, we must really have our citizens in the focus of our efforts, and that means that all policies should be centered around that. And I'm perfectly sure that what we have on offer will be a good one for those partners who make full use of it. So all the best for a new beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and also to give the example with the time. Now I give the floor to Honorable Barry Griffin from Bahamas, 1 minute and a half. Honorable Griffin from Bahamas.
Pass, thank you.
He passes.
So, colleague Hans Heid.
Thank you. Thank you, Co-President, and special thanks to our Commissioner. Special thanks for your efforts for the ratification of the Samoa Agreement, and thank you for being here for this debate. And I can tell you there is a mood and a good attitude, and we all are convinced that this agreement is opportunity and it will bring a new level of participation and cooperation, partnership between our countries and the EU. What I want to address is the situation in the Caribbean and Pacific, and I heard, I noted well, that you talked about initiatives by Team Europe and investments. What I heard in talks with representatives of Caribbean and Pacific nations is that it's often hard for them to attract European investors, investment, especially for renewables, for renewable energy. And in this connection, I want to ask about the state of play, the progress and implementation for full economic partnership agreement between the EU and the Pacific, and also concerning all member states of OACPS about the cooperation and partnership, if this went well and the European Union is finding good partners and good cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, colleague. And now I give the floor to Mali. 1 minute and a half. Collègue Assiris, Mali.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, je voudrais dire que le Mali a signé cet accord. Nous l'avons d'abord, c'est vrai que nous n'étions pas au Samoa, nous l'avons d'abord passé au gouvernement. Le gouvernement l'a examiné de long en large, l'a étudié proprement, et c'est à la suite de tout ça que notre gouvernement a décidé de signer cet accord-là. Donc, notre ambassadeur à Bruxelles a signé cet accord et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous sommes là. Donc ça veut dire simplement, Monsieur le Président, j'ai contenu et je l'ai dit, nous tenons beaucoup à notre coopération avec l'Union européenne. Mais nous tenons à cette coopération en toute liberté et en toute souveraineté. Chacun d'entre nous tient à sa souveraineté et c'est la raison pour laquelle le Mali a accepté de signer cet accord-là. Maintenant, je voudrais poser un certain nombre de questions à Madame. Je voudrais savoir qu'est-ce que cet accord peut apporter aux pays ACP, aux pays d'Afrique, sur le plan des financements, sur le plan de l'aide. Parce qu'on savait ce qu'il y avait dans l'accord de Cotonou, mais cet accord n'a pas été suffisamment diffusé. On ne sait pas véritablement qu'est-ce que cet accord nous apporte en matière d'aide. Donc je voudrais demander à Madame la commissaire de nous éclairer davantage sur ce que cet accord-là nous apporte. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Bienvenue au Mali aussi. Et je donne maintenant la parole à collègue Marc Surville, par 1 minute et demie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, Madame la Commissaire, chers collègues. Les relations entre l'Europe et l'Afrique sont encore passablement dégradées en dépit de tous les efforts. Il est indispensable de retisser les liens entre nos continents afin de créer des perspectives d'avenir pour les citoyens dans des conditions de vie dignes. Cette coopération doit passer par une amélioration du système éducatif africain, et je sais que vous vous y employez. L'Union européenne a une expertise reconnue en matière de politique éducative qu'elle se doit de mettre à disposition des pays d'Afrique, hors de toute considération politique et en respectant leur souveraineté. À cette fin, je réitère, c'est la demande que je vous avais faite, la création d'une agence européenne dédiée à l'éducation permettrait de renforcer le lien entre nos continents afin d'accompagner les responsables locaux à mettre en place des politiques éducatives de qualité dans le respect de l'ODD 4, accessibles à tous, et de créer ensemble des projets de coopération pour l'avenir. Comment la Commission envisage-t-elle de renforcer cette coopération Afrique-Union européenne en matière d'éducation et sous quelles conditions une telle agence pourrait-elle prendre forme? Je vous remercie.
Merci, collègue. Maintenant, je donne la parole. Agora dou a palavra ao representante de São Tomé e Príncipe, 1 minuto e 30. São Tomé e Príncipe, Eclene Lima dos Santos, por favor.
Muito bom dia a todos. Cumprimentar a todos os presentes, principalmente a mesa, senhoras e senhores deputados, membros representando todos os países. Sou Eclene dos Santos, São Tomé e Príncipe. Venho representar aqui a nossa Assembleia Nacional. Sou o único elemento, mas viemos porque entendemos também de que todos nós juntos podemos fazer melhor para a África e em simultâneo para os nossos continentes, neste caso, na qual nós fazemos parte, União Europeia e África. Portanto, para nós é uma honra estarmos aqui presentes, estamos disponíveis e continuaremos a trabalhar para que no futuro possamos todos juntos, a União Europeia e a África, podemos traçar caminhos que nós todos desejamos para o desenvolvimento do nosso continente. Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado. Je donne maintenant la parole à l'honorable Abdoulaye Diallo, République Guinée, 1 minute et demie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, je voudrais transmettre les salutations de la délégation guinéenne au co-président et à l'ensemble des délégations ici présentes. Mon pays, la République de Guinée, soutient ces accords de Samoa. Et je voudrais également saluer la présentation de Madame la Commissaire qui a articulé son intervention sur le Global Gateway qui va être le principal outil de partenariat dans le cadre de ces accords. Mon intervention va porter sur une thématique, la transition énergétique.
Collègue, vous avez seulement 25 secondes.
Justement, je voudrais savoir au niveau de ce Global Gateway, qu'est-ce qui est prévu dans le cadre de la transition énergétique et quel est le mécanisme de coopération que l'Union européenne compte faire par rapport à cette thématique transition énergétique. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. Et maintenant, je donne la parole à collègue François Thiollet. 1 minute et demie, avec un peu plus si vous voulez.
Merci à tous.
L'unique inscrit de groupe vert.
Pardon. Merci à tous. Madame la Commissaire, merci pour la déclaration et l'ambition forte affirmée par l'Union européenne pour les partenariats avec les pays africains, Caraïbes et Pacifiques. Mais aujourd'hui, ce que négocie surtout l'Union européenne, ce sont ce qu'on appelle des partenariats égalitaires qui sont d'abord guidés par des logiques de libre-échange, sans barrière pour les produits et de libre concurrence. Mais de quel partenariat égalitaire parle-t-on quand le lait en poudre européen subventionné concurrence les éleveurs d'Afrique de l'Ouest? De quel partenariat juste parle-t-on quand l'Union européenne passe un accord avec le Kenya par-dessus la communauté d'Afrique de l'Ouest? Est-ce que l'Union européenne permettrait que la Chine passe un accord avec la France ou avec l'Allemagne en dehors de l'Union européenne? Est-ce soutenable d'importer depuis le Kenya des fleurs coupées et des haricots verts qu'on produit en Europe? Je ne crois pas. Est-ce durable et juste que des entreprises européennes contrôlent les marchés d'exportation de matières premières en Afrique? Hier, lors du Forum Jeunesse, un jeune nous interpellait. Pourquoi, alors que vous nous vendez des machines, nous continuons à vous envoyer des bananes? À quel moment le transfert technologique promis par l'Union européenne arrivera pour l'Afrique? Mes questions sont les suivantes. Madame la Commissaire, comment l'Union européenne peut-elle garantir que ces accords protègent les populations locales et respectent les intégrations régionales et la diversification économique? Deuxième question, qu'est-ce que la Commission compte mettre en place pour garantir la cohérence de ces partenariats avec ses objectifs climatiques? Merci.
Merci beaucoup, collègue. Maintenant, je donne la parole honorable, c'était difficile de dire le nom, de Mauritius, please. 1 minute and a half. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Co-President, for giving me the floor. On behalf of my Prime Minister, Pravin Jagnnath, we welcome the Samoa Agreement. Madam Commissioner, Mauritius made written statement this year and participated in the oral proceeding before the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea on the coast brought by Commissioner of Small Island States on climate change and international law on negative consequences of climate change on marine environment. We pointed out that access to concessional financing is an important aspect of our common action to combat negative effects of climate change. But Madam Speaker, sir, the NDC cannot be treated as a lump assistance. As you may know, how important the tourism sector is to SIDS countries like Mauritius and is vital for our GDP and employment. And today, the vulnerable SIDS is accepted by all. The international financial institutions have accepted that they have need to reform. The UN has prepared a report on vulnerability index, which hopefully will be adopted during SIDS 4 in Antigua and Barbuda. And the EU has appointed a special representative for SIDS, and the UK is the same. Therefore, GPA cannot remain impassive on all those developments, because not only the Pacific is concerned and Caribbean, but SIDS countries in Africa also is concerned. I'm making an appeal on behalf of SIDS to review the way EU can help to climate finance so that Mauritius and Seychelles and other countries can benefit from such financing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Honorable Omar Ahmed Weiss, Djibouti, 1 minute and a half. Djibouti, 1 minute et demi.
Merci, je passe. Merci, c'est ici. Oui.
I give now the floor to colleague Janina Okoska from, okay. I'm not saying the name of the group, so I give the name to Janina Okoska. Please, 1 minute and a half.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I come from a non-governmental organization background, and I am convinced that in order to achieve positive changes in all continents, in each of areas of climate change, migration, security, and economic development, it is important to strengthen the position of civil society organizations and grassroots movements, to actively participate in partnership to prepare society for the ongoing changes. This is the only way to ensure that the voice of citizens is heard and taken into account in the decision-making process. Unfortunately, even in the countries where grassroots civic movements have a long tradition, these groups, their opinions and expertise are not given enough attention. By saying this, I wish to raise awareness among my parliamentary colleagues from both continents on this reality, which is inextricably linked to respect for human rights and the rule of law. I have one question for the Commissioner. What funds the European Union will allocate to strengthen the non-governmental sector and grassroots social movements so that they can participate in the decision-making process concerning themselves? Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. And now I give the floor to Prince Dlamini from Eswatini, 1 minute and a half.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, for granting me the floor. May I begin by commending the EU Commissioner, Madam Jutta Urpilainen, for a comprehensive and lucid statement which outlines a clear pathway to the implementation of the recently signed Samoa Agreement. With your permission, Honorable Chair, kindly permit me to seek guidance from the Commissioner following her well-delivered statement. Commissioner, it is abundantly clear that the implementation of the Samoa Agreement is important as a legally binding cooperation framework between the member states of the OACPS and the EU and its member states. As the Commissioner stated, our cooperation spans over 6 decades. Hence, by now, we ought to know which mechanisms and modalities, when applied, will yield optimal outcomes to ensure effective and impactful cooperation for a collective populace. My question seeks to ascertain whether there was a post-mortem conducted after the Cotonou Agreement, and how do you understand the monitoring and evaluation mechanisms of this regionalized agreement to take form? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, colleague. And now I give the floor to colleague Juan Fernando Lopez Aguilar, 1 minute and a half.
speaking time, I could only first commend Commissioner Jutta Urpilaien's speech in its bottom line, which reminds us that we have come a long way from the first Lome to Samoa Agreement, through all the Lomes and Cotonou Agreement, and reminding that this is an interparliamentary assembly. We are members of parliament. It means that we are not executive. We are parliamentarians whose duty is to exert control, parliamentary control on executives, and make sure that we implement every goal of the Samoa Agreement, that when making laws, and particularly in our budgetary commitments, because we have budgetary powers in all of our parliaments, we make sure that every goal and every promise of the Samoa Agreement is actually fulfilled. So, as to conclusion, we are in a fresh start. We're in a new beginning, you said it. And the point is that we should somehow try to do our best to overcome the ideological differences across the lines of this interparliamentary assembly, and even the geographical difference, in order to focus on the interparliamentary work we do and the parliamentary work we do in every national parliament which is represented here, including the European Parliament, when it comes to lawmaking, implementing policies and budgeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleague. And now I give the floor to Honorable André Clifford from Seychelles. 1 minute and a half.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to say that following the Samoa Agreement, Seychelles signed and we went there. We are happy that we signed. However, we want, when consideration is given to anything that is happening in Europe or sanction is being placed on other countries, that consideration is given to small island developing states who would be affected. So how can you minimize the effects that it would have on us, and how can we be better placed to exercise our right to have a free and fair, independent selling of our islands so that people can come and see. We have a new partnership agreement, Mauritius stated, with regards to climate change. These are issues that we need to tackle on a level together as small island developing states, because now we are having a cyclone class 2 that is going to Mauritius, and it has already hit Seychelles, so it is affecting us. So we need to have these considered, and access to the fund should be something that is made not easy, but at least it becomes more relaxed, so when we look at it, we can access it properly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, colleague. And now I give the floor to colleague Samuel Opio from Uganda. 1 minute and a half.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank the Commissioner for the well-delivered statement. The Samoa Agreement is a multilateral agreement, and EU also has bilateral agreement. The partner states that have also signed the Samoa Agreement are in different regional blocks. We have the East Africa Community, ECOWAS, SADC, which also have their treaties. So we are in a sea of agreements and an ocean of treaties. I would like to know, how do we ensure, or as EU, that these multilateral agreements and the bilateral agreements are inconsistent with some of the local and the regional agreements that the partner states have signed, so that we can move in harmony within this sea of agreements. Secondly, you've talked about the figures on climate change, 20 billion euros investment. You've talked about 100 million people accessing electricity by 2030. However, we're looking at the needs for the other blocks like Africa, where unemployment is still on the rise. And we want to know what is EU's investment package when it comes into private sector, when it comes into education, the transport sector, but also looking at value addition. That has been one of the issues we've been raising constantly. Has the EU considered this as one of the priorities within the partnership agreement moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleague. And now I give the floor to colleague Bernard Zimniok from 1 minute and a half. Colleague? Okay. Sorry. Perhaps I don't say well your name, but...
Ja, danke, Chair. Global Gateway, 300 Milliarden für die Welt, 150 für Afrika. Frau Kommissarin, das sind gute Zahlen für schöne Sonntagsreden. Ich sehe die Zukunft, aber diese Hilfen und der Zusammenarbeit ökonomisch gesehen auf sehr wackeligen Beinen. Und Sie wissen das. In den nächsten 2 Jahren wird in Europa sich erhebliche politische Verschiebungen ergeben und nicht nur im Europäischen Parlament. Es wird nicht mehr ein Weitergeben so sein wie bisher. Die Ökonomie erlaubt es nicht. Das größte Beitragszahlerland Deutschland, mein Heimatland, ist dank der grün-linken Politik ökonomisch im freien Fall. Wir stehen vor dem Kollaps. Wir müssen jetzt die Probleme auf Augenhöhe ansehen und diskutieren, auch in diesem Hause. Ich weiß, wenn ich jetzt anspreche, dass wir auch die Bevölkerungsentwicklung hier in Afrika in Betracht ziehen müssen, dass wir unsere Möglichkeiten gar nicht haben, das zu behandeln, dass wir ein Hase-Igel-Spiel haben, dann begehe ich einen Tabubruch. Ich weiß es und ich werde auch noch mehr gehasst als jetzt schon. Aber wir müssen diese Probleme tabulos ansprechen. Wir müssen den Mut zur Wahrheit haben, diese Dinge anzugehen. Und zwar nicht nur 1 oder 2 dürfen es ansprechen, sondern das ist ein Problem, das hier das ganze Haus, das die ganze Welt betrifft. Wir dürfen den Kopf nicht in den Sand stecken, Frau Kommissarin. Und das tun wir. Wir gehen immer weiter Kopf in den Sand.
Thank you, colleague. And now I give the floor to Honorable Sefulu from Zambia. 1 minute enough.
Thank you so very much, Mr. President. Let me also thank the Commission for that comprehensive statement. First of all, allow me to acknowledge the help that the EU gives to the OACP countries in regards to Zambia, with the help that we're having right now to the Lobito corridor, which is going to enhance trade. But let me also make mention that we are looking forward to having equitable opportunities when it comes to this OACPS EU agreement. Let me make mention that also, that there are so many promises that were made by the West in regards to climate finance to mitigate climate change that have not been fulfilled. We are looking forward in this new partnership agreement with what has been said that this is going to be fulfilled. Let me make mention that in Zambia right now have a prolonged drought that is going to affect our food security. Secondly, let me also make mention that in this new agreement, we are looking forward to having a 50-50 kind of partnership, especially in regards to EU regulations that really affect us as the OACPS. Let me pinpoint on the critical raw materials where Zambia is really affected. We are talking about, EU is talking about 40% processing being done in the EU countries, while we are saying we want the processing and value addition to be done in our African countries so that we can, we can solve the challenges with employment, and we can't also continue to export jobs because we continue being on the same level and will not be able to resolve the migration issues. With that, I submit.
Thank you very much, colleague. And so now I give the floor to colleague Tomasz Zdowski. 1 minute enough.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm here. I would like only express that it's very important to really have it long-term cooperation. Europe is prepared really give Africa more technologies and more cooperation in many fields. We are asking for more cooperation in security and other things, and I think that it must be partnership. It was here mentioned that it must be win-win situation for the both sides. Also, development of Africa is victory of Europe, and we have to take it so. And I think that now is the time to really work together much more closely. You mentioned here many times environment. You mentioned here many times the climate change. And this is one of most important topic for us before the European election, and it will be after. And we need a really credible partner. We need you, that you are really our partner in many of these issues. And European Union is prepared for the future to help you to improve all the conditions what you needed. And I heard here and I met here many really very interesting members of African parliaments. And I'm very happy that you are grow up. You are doing a lot of progress. Europe is not pressing you. Europe is now inviting you to be part of the democratic world.
Very interesting way to finish your intervention. So I give the floor now, because your time is up. I give now the floor to colleague Maria Manuel Leitão Marques, 1 minute and a half.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to speak in Portuguese, of course. Queria agradecer à Comissária ter aqui falado numa parceria centrada nas pessoas, o que significa, naturalmente, até num país como este, onde a média de idade são 16 anos, investir na qualificação e na educação. Mas também queria chamar a atenção para outro ponto, que é o das competências digitais e da conectividade. Mais 10% de cobertura digital em África significa mais 1% do PIB africano. E essa conectividade é também um instrumento importante para a educação e para melhorar outros serviços públicos, como a saúde e serviços administrativos. Por fim, queria chamar a atenção para um ponto. É muito importante que o acesso a estes financiamentos seja entendido por aqueles que são os seus beneficiários na sociedade civil, empresas, cidadãos e organizações da sociedade civil que trabalham nestes países. E nem sempre isso acontece, porque às vezes é muito complicada, a burocracia é muito pesada para o acesso aos financiamentos e eles não ficam claros nem transparentes para a generalidade dos atores relevantes que devem conhecê-los e beneficiar deles. Muito obrigada.
Obrigado, colega. I give now the floor to colleague Monica Semedo, 1 minute and a half.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, EU investments, they have borne fruit, for example, in Cape Verde. And this, although it is entirely vulnerable to external shocks, this small island state made it from a least developed to a developing country. This is a success story that leads as example. And we should exchange their best practices, but also what did not yet really work. The Commission Global Gateway Initiative, there Cape Verde gets 246 million boost to invest in green energy and digital transition. And I celebrate that. But this is mainly a loan. At the same time, the global Euro funds under the NDICI framework, which are mainly grants, is being cut by half. So we must ensure that projects regarding and strengthening human and women's rights, education, job creation, and a fairer, a more equal, a more inclusive society are keep on running. So, dear Commissioner, what is your assessment to this? What are your recommendations for other states and countries that are in a similar situation? Because states like Cape Verde should not be the victim of their success. And it is crucial we keep on investing into people, into the citizens, because they are the driving force of the countries. And we have to keep on investing in that.
Thank you very much
for
your collaboration. And now I give the floor to colleague Jack Madison. 1 minute and a half. Here, I'm not seeing you. So I give the floor to the representative of Malawi. 1 minute and a half.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for recognizing Malawi. Mr. President, I would like to thank also the Commissioner for a very elaborate, very inspiring and hope-giving statement as we start our path on the new partnership agreement. As Malawi, our expectations are very high, particularly knowing that as a new administration, we have been installed having inherited a huge debt stock, both domestic and international. But also at the time we were trying to put things in order, we were severely hit by the Cyclone Fred. Also, we are hit by the COVID-19. However, the administration has put in place recovery plans, has put in place economic recovery plan, as well as reconstruction and recovery for the for the Cyclone Freddy. The question I want to raise to the Commissioner: what is it that the EU would like to assist Malawi, particularly with the recovery from the Cyclone Freddy, whose budget is in excess of $1 billion? Secondly, we have put in place the economic recovery plan. As I talked about, we have inherited a huge debt stock. What is it that the EU intends to do about? Secondly, we have this huge debt internationally. Can the EU assist with debt cancellation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, colleague. And you have now the last question from colleague Maria Neuchel. 1 minute and a half.
Ganz herzlichen Dank, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, einerseits aus Europa, einerseits aus Afrika. Wenn manche hier den Anschein erwecken wollen, als würde Europa kurz vor einer großen Veränderung stehen, dann ist es nicht so. In Europa gibt es eine sehr, sehr klare, klar strukturierte Demokratie, und diese Demokratie steht fest am Boden. Zahlreiche Demonstrationen sind jeden Tag auf der Straße, um genau diese Demokratie zu stützen. Heute waren 2 Redner hier im Plenarsaal, die davon gesprochen haben, das wäre alles in Zukunft nicht mehr möglich. In Zukunft würde auch wohl keine Partnerschaft mehr mit Afrika existieren. Ich kann Ihnen nur sagen, glauben Sie diesen Hetzern nicht. Glauben Sie denen nicht, die mit Hass Menschen spalten wollen. Leider gibt es solche auch bei uns in Europa. Solche gibt es in Ihren Ländern, solche gibt es in unseren Ländern. Es werden aber immer die gewinnen, die gemeinsam arbeiten. Es werden immer die gewinnen, die mehr das Gemeinschaftliche in den Vordergrund stellen und weniger das uns trennt. Natürlich trennt uns auch einiges. Aber lassen Sie uns auf das blicken, was wir gemeinsam haben. Wir haben gemeinsam den Kampf für die Würde aller Menschen. Wir haben gemeinsam den Kampf für die Würde zwischen Männern und Frauen. Wir haben gemeinsam den Kampf für das jedes Leben zählt. Das eint uns. Und das ist stärker als der Hass, den manche hier, leider auch hier in diesem Saal, aus der europäischen Ecke verspritzen. Ganz herzlichen Dank.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much all colleagues, because we are able to manage the time to give yet enough time to the Commissioner to answer so good questions. Please, we have 15 minutes to do that.
Honourable Chair, dear colleagues, dear parliamentarians, thank you for your questions and also interventions you made. I tried to write down all the questions, and I tried to cover all of them, taking into account the time limits we have. So, if I start first with the climate-related questions, because there were several, especially from SIDS countries. There were many questions regarding access to climate finance, and I fully understand your concern. And I'm personally going to participate in this United Nations SIDS conference later this year. I remember it's in the end of May in the Caribbean. And I definitely want to engage also with you and listen to your concerns. When it comes to EU's activities, we have to remember that the EU, our member states, and for instance the European Investment Bank, so-called Team Europe, is the largest provider of public climate finance globally. We are the biggest one. If I look at the statistics, 2022 we provided 28.5 billion euros. And of course, we understand that this is not enough. Also us, we need to do more. And that's why we have been actively supporting and supported this multi-development banks reform, so MDB reforms. Because we think that through that actually reform, we are able to provide more access, especially to climate finance, for the least developed countries, but also for the low middle income countries. And I really hope that we are able to take the decisions regarding the MDB reform in terms of World Bank, as well as some other regional development banks in the near future. When it comes to our modalities and our tools in the EU budget, the main financial tool we have in our budget is NDICI Global Europe, and many of you actually have referred to that. And 35% of the funding which goes through that modality is somehow related to climate. So climate, in terms of funding, climate is definitely our #1 priority. So I would say that we are doing a lot. We have a different kind of projects around the world relating to climate. But of course, we fully understand that also we need to do more. Then there was a question regarding, this kind of people-centered and citizen-centered policies and politics. There was a precise question regarding, I'm not saying only this as a former MP myself or as a former teacher myself, but I come from a country which really changed its nature through the education. And that's why when I started as a commissioner, I decided to increase our funding to education from 7% of our total funding to 13%. So it means that the European Union is now using over 6 billion euros globally to education projects. And we have 3 priorities. The first one is access to primary education, especially for girls. The second priority is vocational education and training, so TVET, what we are, for instance, doing here in Angola quite a lot. And then the third priority is teachers, because there is no education without teachers. And for instance, when it comes to Africa, we have a specific initiative, teacher training initiative for sub-Saharan Africa. We have allocated 100 million euros for that. And the idea is really to support governments and authorities in sub-Saharan African countries to train more teachers, but also improve the quality of teacher training. Because we know that this is also something we have to pay more attention to, that teachers who are teaching, they are qualified and they have received high quality education themselves. In total, we are, when we negotiated with some of my dear friends and colleagues from the European Parliament on this NDICI Global Europe financial tool in the beginning of my mandate, we set a target of 20% of funding for human development, 20%. I'm very happy to tell you that at the moment we have used 30%, over 30% of our funding to human development already. And this is why I see that fighting inequalities, fighting poverty is still the biggest priority and the compass for the European Union in our partnership with the Africans, with the Pacifics, and with the Caribbeans. Then there was a very important question regarding critical raw materials. And I fully understand your concern regarding this. I can only tell you what is the EU's offer. How do we see our partnership regarding critical raw materials? We just recently, I noticed that no one from Namibia actually took the floor, but some months ago we were able to adopt a roadmap regarding critical raw materials and our partnership on that, as well as green hydrogen. And the roadmap actually has very clear objective and targets and also different steps how we can improve and create value chains on the critical raw materials. So our aim is not extract and export critical raw materials from Namibia or elsewhere from Africa, Latin America, Caribbean, Pacific to Europe. Our aim is really to create national and local value. And this is why we need to have very holistic, comprehensive, 360 degrees approach through which we are supporting you in terms of regulatory framework, in terms of strengthening your institutions, and in terms of training your citizens so that they can employ themselves or they can create jobs, and of course also in terms of infrastructure. And I see this very important also when it comes to the discussion on how to attract, how to incentivize, how to encourage European companies to invest in your countries. So we can do that, and we are happy to support you in order to boost your economy, to get more revenues, to recreate more jobs. But of course, we need your support in order to improve the business environment and also, I would say, the regulatory environment and framework in your countries. So this is very much win-win cooperation from our perspective, and we are very committed to that. And Namibia is not the only one with whom we have created and signed this kind of MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. There are several countries. Latest this week was Rwanda, with whom I signed this kind of agreement. There were also questions, I think it was Mali who raised the question that what are the benefits? What are the benefits of this Samoa agreement? I would say that there are different kinds of benefits. Of course, this is, from the beginning, this is political agreement. So we want to enhance our political cooperation. We want to do that within the EU OACPS framework, as well as other multilateral fora. And we have together, because I was the chief negotiator in these negotiations, so I know different steps of negotiations very well, and this has been a long journey. So we have together set a common objectives in terms of human rights, in terms of security, in terms of migration and so forth. But there are also financial benefits of this agreement. And I give you one example. Unfortunately, those countries who have not signed the Samoa agreement, they cannot make new financial contracts with the European Investment Bank. Or other way around, vice versa, European Investment Bank cannot make new financial contracts with those countries who have not signed the Samoa agreement. So there is, of course, this kind of financial consequences and also benefits of this agreement. And therefore, I definitely encourage all the OACPS countries to sign the new agreement. I know that many of you have already done it, but the rest, I really encourage you to do that as soon as possible. Then there were several countries who refer to debt levels and debt restructuring. As a former finance minister myself, I fully understand your concern. If I only look at Kenya, Zambia, where both of them recently visited, Malawi, where I was in Malawi last year, I fully understand your concern. If 60 to 80% of your revenues, national revenues, really goes to debt service, that's really difficult to develop and invest in your public services and your society. And that's why I understand, and of course the EU is also in opinion that we support debt restructuring. We have been supporting Zambia, we have supported many other countries in their endeavor to negotiate with the IMF, but also with other, the Paris Club and other international actors. And what we can do as the EU, because we are not creditors, we can then, of course, use budget support as a modality, which we have done in many of your countries. But at the same time, we have to remember that I think our long-lasting objective is to decrease your dependency on our aid. And that's why I personally think that in addition to this public financing, which we can provide from the EU budget with the criteria and conditions, there is importance to increase also private investments in your countries. And that's what we are doing through the Global Gateway Strategy. And that's why it's so important that we can work together with the financial institutions. We create also new modalities, like we did this debt for climate swap with Barbados, or we use our guarantees through the European Investment Bank in order to also incentivize, attract and encourage private companies to invest your countries. I actually finish by saying that I think it was MEP Gahler who said that there are different kinds of offers in the world, that the European Union should be aware that we are not the only ones who, make offers, and we fully understand that. What is our aim is really to strengthen your strategic autonomy, strengthen your resilience, and improve the livelihoods and environment of your citizens. This is what we want to do through our mutually beneficial equal partnerships. And the tool to do that is the Global Gateway Strategy. 300 billion euros investments by the year 2027 globally. Half of that, 150 billion euros, targeted for Africa. And those investments really cover energy, transport, like Lobito Corridor here in Angola, but also digital, which is important enabler also in terms of economic growth, as well as education and health and research. So not only hard infrastructure, but very much also soft connectivity in line with the SDGs and Agenda 2030. And we want to be your partner. We want to support you in order to reach sustainable development goals. We know that we have many challenges in our own continent, in our member states, and some of the MEPs were referring to that, our also economic constraints and the situation which is also challenging in many of our member states. However, I can only assure you that the European Union is committed to walk this path together with you. So we are not going to turn our back to the rest of the world, despite the challenges we are facing in our countries and in our neighborhood. We are here because we want to serve our citizens, and especially young people and children who are the future of our societies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Dear colleagues, we will have a break in our section. We will remain at 3 p.m. with the point 2 of the agenda. See you at 3 p.m. Thank you very much.
Can the European colleagues just come down to the center of the room for taking the joint photo with the Commissioner?